I think we have to put everything in a context. Whatever President Trump has decided, or whatever anybody else will decide in the near future, there is a history to how we've been going about things for decades as Africa. So it isn't like we should just wake up one morning and because of what somebody has done that affects us, we should have been building up the momentum in terms of what we need to do to make Africa self-dependent and resilient, and also in how Africa works with other continents and other countries. So that is the context. So in this case, it is as well that President Trump decided to do what he did, if that was only to add to many other reminders or things that should wake us up to, as Africa, be able to do what we ought to do. And there are many opportunities. We always talk about potential of our continent, but when do we realize really what this potential is all about in reality? I think that has always been the question. And that comes back to us as a continent, as a people of this continent, to take the bull by its horns and deal with the problem. So we can't keep depending on what others are saying or doing about us. We need to be working with each other and other countries on the global stage that offer what we need, and we as well offer what they need. I think this is the context. There are several efforts going on at the same time. That's the problem. And even that one we are talking about, whether it is Qatar or the US, or we can't say we have succeeded. Everyone is trying. And again, it comes back to us, really. If you look at what we've been doing on our continent, much progress has been made. I think we can't say nothing has been done, generally. Whether it was to do with the reforms, and I think Africans have come together. They have defined things and speak with one voice increasingly. There is significant progress. And but most of these developments that have been happening in the last decade, as I said, are reminders that there are things we need to do that we haven't done. So if you look at it at the African Union level, I remember when I was the champion of the reform process, there are things that were discussed on the continent. For example, the peace and security facility that was put in place. Because it was put in place to avoid being fully dependent on external funders, because that has been the case. In fact, this is similar to what happens in other areas in different countries.
On the peace process, particularly in the conflict that's been happening on our continent, and particularly in the Eastern DRC, I'd like to compliment rather than contradict what President Kagame is saying. The processes that have been happening on the continent, either the Nairobi process or the Luanda process or the AU process, have been very, very essential in building a foundation of peacemaking and also confidence building, up to and including agreements that have been reached for a ceasefire between the belligerents, up to and including the withdrawal of, say, the SADC forces as they are withdrawing now. I mean, people may think that President Kagame and I are in conflict, and some of you may have thought that there's going to be fireworks as we're sitting close to each other.